Hello, New Zealand. I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk for our 19th episode. And we are coming to you from all over social media. But if you want to comment, then watch us on our YouTube channel, Family First NZ, or on our Facebook page, Family First NZ as well. And then I can see your comments coming through, and we can even show them on the screen. Right, let's get straight into it. Well, let's welcome the panel. And we've got some of our regulars away. Christine Rankin is still struggling a little bit, getting over the flu and COVID and a little bit of everything. Ronji is overseas. Cherie is overseas. Ashley was unavailable. So we've still got some pretty good looking ones here. Bruce Logan, how are you, Bruce?
I'm fine, thank you. I think
That's
so.
good. I think so, yep. Darren Gammy, who was our guest last week, and he was so good we invited him back. How are you, Darren?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, now Sue Reed, who is a board member of Family First and from Masterton. How's it going, Sue?
Very well, thanks, Bob.
Okay, Alla is, we're counting down. It is, what is it, Alla? 6 weeks to arrival? 7 weeks. Okay, nobody's counting. Okay, but I'm having a chocolate a day to deal with the, the munchies and all that type of stuff. Arte in Wellington, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Malolele, everyone.
Okay, right. Let's get straight into it. And cartoon of the week, see if you can figure this one out, team. This is Fresh Veeables. What on earth is a veeable? Hipkins thinks it's an election winner. Veeable is vegetables without the G, the S, and the T. You guys all got that, didn't you? The image is more impressive, actually. Here is the image of. Did you get that, Bruce?
Slowly.
Yeah. Okay. The image of the week. This is Eden Park on Saturday with a World Cup soccer football game for women. And if you look up top there, you'll see a plane towing a banner. And the banner, there it is, flying over the Auckland city skyline on Saturday afternoon. Beautiful day. And the banner says, "What is a woman.nz?" In fact, we have some footage from inside the stadium. Now, it was Spain playing Switzerland. And I was there with my daughter, and we filmed this. And there's the national anthems. I'm not sure which national anthem it is. Somebody will know. But up in the sky, is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's a plane, and it's towing a big banner right over, what was it, 42,000 at Eden Park or something like that, asking, what is a woman? And you can see that's superb camera work by me on my iPhone. And there is the crowd. So, a lot of interest, a lot of fun. So that's our video of the week. Now, the other video of the week that I just needed to show you was Christine has been sitting at home feeling sick, feeling sorry for herself, and obviously watching brainless videos. And she sent this one to me during the week, and she said, "Bob, you just got to watch this." And this is a video that she sent.
Are boys from the beginning. If you were born a boy, you stay a boy. Girls are girls right from the start. If you were born a girl, you stay a girl and grow up to be a lady. Everybody's fancy, everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine.
Here's the best bit.
Only girls can be the mommies.
What?
Only boys can be the daddies. Yes, sir. Boys are...
Okay, now, Bruce, do you know who that is?
No.
Does anybody know who it is?
I know he's American.
Yeah. His name slipped me. Somebody will tell us.
He doesn't know his apostrophes anyway.
That'll be the person who made it. I can't believe that they still allow that video online. Anyway, okay, let's get into the free speech moment. The order I've got here is Bruce, Alla, Bob, Sue, Ate, and Darren. So I hope you remembered the order. And Bruce, you're going to kick us off. And Mr. Rogers, that's what it was. Thank you, Uwe. It is Mr. Rogers. Supposed to be very famous. Does that ring a bell, Bruce, now?
No.
Oh, okay. Right, Bruce, you want to talk about...
what it used to be.
No.
You'd asked me yesterday, I might have known.
Okay, well, that segues into your topic nicely. It is mental health. So your 90 seconds starts now.
Well, what is it with social and psychological dysfunction and mental health? It would seem that half the population is sheltering under its ever-expanding canopy to keep out of the threatening storm, imaginary or real. Well, I've half an answer at first and then maybe a complete one. I've recently read 2 extended articles on the increasing incidence of deteriorating mental health, not only in New Zealand, but also around the Western world. Both articles reinforce the positive relationship between religious belief, especially church attendance, and good mental health. It was encouraging to read the data and the statistics, but I was to get a great deal more encouragement, that is. A few days ago, I visited a very lovely dying cousin with motor neurone disease in hospital. Her emaciated body caught me in the heart and throat. But to my surprise, I was to have a salutary and extraordinary uplifting experience as I spent time with her. Both of us have been believers united in Christ for nearly 50 years. Although we were soon to be separated, we knew, and we said so to each other, that we would see each other again. Death, our last enemy, wouldn't win. We cried and we laughed together, neither of us quite sure what was going on in our hearts as we prayed. Amanda, not a real name, spent my entire visit caressing my hand. I thought my tears a most rewarding privilege. So I didn't need the data about religious faith and mental health, true as I'm sure it is. Here was the secret in action, clothed with flesh and blood, resting in its own vulnerability and encircled by the hope and reality of God's everlasting comfort. So what else can one say but hallelujah?
Well said. And actually, I had the privilege of taking a funeral last Thursday along a similar vein, Bruce. I don't know how people cope in those situations without the hope of faith and certainty of what's ahead. Right, Alla, you want to talk about, back to politics, paid parental leave, and obviously, impending arrival, very important. Your 90 seconds starts now.
Awesome. Last week, the Labour Party was the only political party that voted down the Parental Leave and Employment Protection / Shared Leave Amendment Bill, fronted by Nationals' Nicola Willis. The bill, in a nutshell, aimed to make parental leave more flexible, allowing parents to share leave between themselves or take leave in overlapping instalments or separate leave into different chunks. Today, the PM came out in defence of his party's no vote, stating that the bill was unimplementable. However, wait for it, the Labour Party, I repeat, not the government, would be making an announcement on parental leave in due course, where, according to the PM, the Labour Party can give parents more options to spend more time at home with their babies. That's a positive development. This is Chippy. It is disappointing that in 2023, supporting parents and families and raising children are still superseded by political point scoring, policy announcements, and a government that thinks it knows best for parents and families. It is disgraceful and shameful that a common sense bill that would have given parents, caregivers, and parents to be like myself and my husband choice and flexibility, and that it didn't even pass a first reading. I guess on the flip side, it has been encouraging to see a cross-party agreement, minus Party Pooper Labour, on the importance of shared parenting and supporting parents, caregivers, and families. Whilst this bill may be a lost opportunity, it has definitely reignited conversations around a longer paid parental leave period, full-time parenting, and parents being at home to raise children.
Well done. Actually, we come back to that topic later on, so I'm sure there'll be a bit of a bun fight. Well done. Bob, you are next. Your 17 minutes starts now. There was 2 interesting studies on marriage that have recently come out. One is new research from the University of Chicago that found that marriage is the most important differentiator of who is happy in America, and that falling marriage rates are a chief reason why happiness has declined nationally. The research surveyed thousands of respondents and revealed a startling 30% point happiness divide between married and unmarried Americans. This happiness boost held true for both men and women. The researchers said that other factors do matter, including income, educational achievement, race and geography, but marital status is most influential when it comes to predicting happiness in the study. They said it's about the same whether the unmarried state is due to divorce, separation, death of spouse, or never having married. And notably, this decline has been concentrated amongst less educated and lower income Americans, College-educated and affluent Americans have seen virtually no dip in their happiness. Commentators say that the decline in marriage amongst working class and poor Americans is one of the biggest factors explaining the growing happiness divide between the privileged and unprivileged. The second study is from the UK. Married couples are far more likely than unmarried couples to still be together when the children turn 14. That's according to the Millennium Cohort Study. It's a long-running survey, follows 18,000 British families with children born at the turn of the millennium. And analysing the data, the Marriage Foundation think tank found that 84% of parents who are still together when their firstborn child turns 14 are married, while just 16% are unmarried. The researchers said marriage provides relationship clarity and encourages good things like sacrifice and forgiveness, which is so important when children are involved. This is why couples who have tied the knot tend to be more stable and more likely to weather the challenges that life throws at them. If you want to experience the rich rewards of fully enjoying your children, marrying the other parent is a crucial first step, end quote. These studies just confirm what we already know about the glue and benefits of marriage when we work at it and when we honour it as God's intention for healthy family life. Sue, your 90 seconds starts and you want to talk about turfing out the turf terminology.
Yes, I do. Yes. So Family First recently launched the What is a Woman .nz campaign and promoting the discussions around the erasure of women's language, spaces and rights. And that topic is really important to me. Especially being a wordsmith, I seek to uphold the terms and titles that matter to women, adult, human, female and girls. We encourage voters to ask those that seek to represent them, what is a woman? After all, if they cannot determine what basic biology is, they should not have a seat in any governance role. So I'll add another question to our hopeful wannabe politicians. I'd like voters to ask, have you, would you, or do you use the acronym TERF, Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist? Why? Why this line of questioning? Because it shows where politicians sit in their view and the value of women, and that in turn affects their policy planning. And it tells me how they value me as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a sister, as an aunt, a niece. And that is important for the women and the girls around me, and that they should be valued. So it's a term that I align with another revolting swear word. It is derogatory. It's a slur. It's an insult. And just because you do not abide by these trans activist mantras, look at what has happened to the author, J.K. Rowling. So corporates and businesses seem to have been okay with this of recent times. But I'm going to say it's time to turf the turf terminology. Thanks, Bob.
Well done, thank you. Now, Ate, you want to talk about government handouts, and your 90 seconds starts now.
Thank you. The government handouts to people is, while we need to help the poor, but it's getting to the stage where people are getting paid and they get more from the government, which is the taxpayers. They don't want to work. You know, some of the young people, they don't want to work, and restaurants and agencies can't get people to work because they get more from the government. So it is a concern because it robs people of their dignity, and you have cycles of the poor just perpetuating where children grow up. You know, like for example in Auckland and throughout the country, where people since COVID have been staying in hotels and they get provided food and money paid for by the taxpayers, and there's no incentive for people to get out of this and work and to enjoy the dignity of getting money from your own labor. And the other problem is that we have the elderly and those who have been working for many years. Now they can't even, the long waiting list to get their hips and their knees replaced. they can't even get in while all these other people are just enjoying a free ride. So my concern is that, the Labour government is using this, I presume, has always been to get votes. But people need to wake up. It's not bashing the poor, but it's about waking up and give people the dignity to work and to look after our elderly who has worked all these years, and they need to get the care that they, health care that they need. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, Ate. Right, finally, Darren, and you want to touch on the same topic that Bruce talked about at the kickoff, and that is mental health. So your time starts now.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. I just want to start off by tautukuing what Bruce said. The thousands of pastors and family members who sit with those who are walking through the veil, the final veil of this life, and just the reality of the care that they provide and in relation to mental health. But I do want to talk quickly about mental health. I don't want to downplay the critical nature of mental health, the deep negative impact that it can have on our lives, those we love, the communities that we're a part of. But so often it appears that we're powerless before it. And I wonder whether it's time to return to a focus on mental hygiene, something we can take responsibility for. Mental hygiene is more like washing your hands. It's all about taking responsibility for your own mental space, or as the Bible says, taking every thought captive. Not easy, but possible. And the Bible puts it plainly in Philippians, where it says, summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Faith, love, and hope. These three endure. They are foundational ways of living our lives that have served us well. And I just believe we need to get back to some of these fundamentals in order to improve our mental hygiene and thus our mental health.
Right, well done. Thank you. That was great. Now let's just check some of the comments that came through. Kevin Sorensen said, has Matt Walsh seen the video of the plane? Well, we actually have been trying to tag him in to see if he has. That's Matt Walsh from Daily Wire, who did the What is a Woman movie. Here we go. Allah, you've got a fan. Leslie says, "Atta girl, Allah." There we go. So obviously agreed with what you were saying. We'll come back to that one. Crystal said marriage is a godly covenant. Manawahine Koreru says, kia ora, well done on the What is a Woman banner. Sarah also refers to that and says, well said, it's so very sad we need to even say that this is an attack on women. We are not the aggressors, but are under attack. And Ricky is stoked because he got here on time this week and he hopes everyone is well. So anyway, Ricky, nice to have you. Right, straight into it. 68 days before we go to the polling booth, or some of us might go slightly earlier as well. And according to the News Hub latest poll, Labor has dropped to 32, National up to 36, ACT up to 12, and the Greens up to 9.6. Let's have a look at the Roy Morgan poll. National is up to 33, Labor, big drop, 4.5 down to 26. ACT on 14, Greens on 9, Māori on 6, and New Zealand First are knocking on the door at 5. And the New Zealand Herald have done a poll of polls, so they look across all the multiple political polls and average them out. They've come to National 34.5, Labor 32.5, ACT 12, Greens on 9.3, New Zealand First 3.7, and Te Pāti Māori 3.5, Toppers on 2.4. So very quickly around the panel, was Christine right all along that the Labor vote would collapse, or has Labor just had a bad run? And you might want to comment on whether Winston is a viable vote now that he's getting closer to 5%. I'm sure Ashley would be stoked by that news. So, Sue, would you like to kick us off? What do you think this is saying overall?
Yeah, I think Christine was right. And I sort of had a collective held breath each time polls came out. And yeah, polls can be a blunt tool at times. But I think what you're looking for is those patterns. And they are trending, Labor is trending down. But I had that collective held breath because, of course, Trudeau got back in Canada and Dan Andrews got back in Victoria, and they were very problematic leftist states that I wanted, they're just because the opposition wasn't there. So I thought, well, it could still happen. Now I'm starting to just sort of get into that hope. But yes, Christine was right. But I want to point out that this is a tipping point election. that I think people are probably feeling ill at ease with the combination of Labor, Green, and Te Pāti Māori combination. That is a tipping point to quite a leftist situation for New Zealand. It takes us into extreme territory. So I think it isn't just a bad run. I think that Labor has been exposed for their incompetency and the calibre of MPs. I think that, well, the lack of calibre, the lack of integrity, and sheer lack of vision. There's just nothing that's getting traction and that to be inspired by.
Okay. Arlo, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do actually. I don't know what else to add. I think people are starting to see Labor for who they are. Just a whole lot of smoke screens starting to come down. I think people are fed up with the nice to have and feel good narratives behind their policies. So I think people want to see action, and it's been 7, 8 years, 2 terms. They're getting stale. So maybe it's time to pick them somewhere down the road, never to come back.
Yeah, it feels like 7 to 8 years. It's actually only 5.5, believe it or not, but it
Oh,
feels
sorry,
like
that was my pregnancy brain.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's right. We'll blame that. It does feel like that. Ate, it does seem like all the chickens are coming home to roost at the same time. Is that the right saying? It's kind of like it's all just fallen apart.
Yeah, it has fallen apart, and it's been a mess. And it's good that people are waking up to see the mess that Labor had promised all along and never delivered. The incompetency that has been mentioned, and just no shame of what they've done to destroy this country. My only concern is that that they might pull out some tricks and try and lie to people just before the election and give out some more handouts, especially for Pacific people. But I hope that they will continue to go down. They do not deserve to lead this country. And I hope that they won't win.
Okay, Darren, do you think these polls reflect what people are thinking, or should we express?
Yeah.
Should we be cautious?
Yeah, look, leadership's based on trust, and trust is really based on 4 key things. There's consistency, people walking the talk. There's integrity, people keep their promises. There's competence, they get results, and there's a lived ethic of care. And so if you kind of think about it in that light, then, the promises just haven't been kept, the stuff's not getting done. And so sooner or later, and, add to that the financial, climate, the fact that it's getting harder at the pumps, the supermarket, and people who are paying mortgages, et cetera, rent. It's just like the vice is tightening.
Okay, Bruce, agree with all that?
I think it was Bill Clinton who said it's the economy, stupid. And I think that at last is dawning on us. It is the economy, and people are starting to feel in the pocket. And when people feel things closely in the pocket, then they do lash out at this government, and that's what's happening now. Some of the old ideological ideas that might get people, old blokes like me, excited are important and significant, but a lot of people don't worry too much unless they feel very closely attached to something and it's affecting them. And with inflation going the way it is, the New Zealand dollar declining, and the possibility of it going even further down, I can't see how the present government has got a look in. I think it's likely to fall down a very deep and dark hole.
Okay, there's 2 comments that I just want to share with you guys. Charmaine says, I think it's National and ACT and New Zealand First, and hopefully New Conservative as well. They've rebranded, started their election campaign now, real MMP this time. And Loris says, nobody is mentioning the small parties. And that's a question I want to ask the panel. None of you have talked about the small parties. Ata, you might like to kick us off on this one.
Oh, I'm really encouraged. I think if we can encourage about the 30% of people who do not vote, and hopefully that they will give their vote to the minor parties. As a Christian, I really believe that there are, that we should vote for values. I have always voted for values, and I think Freedom's New Zealand. They have got very strong values that is aligned with, our Christian values for Pacifica. So I believe that there is hope, but unfortunately that they don't show up with the New Zealand funded media, of course. But I believe that there is hope that if we can have the minor parties, that we can see some change. Thank you.
Okay, Ala, have you got any advice for the really minor parties? I mean, is there some way they can get noticed? Why aren't they being noticed?
It seems like an uphill battle for anyone that isn't obviously backed by our mainstream media, or even funded or helped by the electoral roll. I think the reality is that people are going. I want to echo what Atia said in terms of voting with your values. That's important in any democracy. But the reality of the way New Zealanders vote in our climate today, people are going to vote, as everyone said, everyone's feeling the pinch, so they're going to vote strategically. And I don't know if our minor parties are, have got enough sort of gusto in their campaign strategies or political strategies to really rally people together, and especially 68 days out, like it's really cutting it close. It'll take a miracle for one of those minor parties to really break through the threshold, because there's about a gazillion of them at this stage. But I think if we look at sort of New Zealand First, they've really shown, and ACT Party, I guess, the sort of long-term and longevity required for a minor party to kind of gain momentum over a long period. And unfortunately, some of these parties aren't there yet.
Okay, so just before you say something, just this one from Lisa, who says, no, hang on, it's Leanne. Sorry, let me just send you that one. Leanne says, if only a bunch of those small parties would come together, is there a chance? Ditch the solo ego, join up. Sue, what do you reckon?
Yeah, that's the problem. They're not coming together, and I don't think they will. And there's been a lot of mistakes along the way. And I just see the minor parties in absolute disarray. One comment I will say, probably Matt King probably made a mistake in probably running with candidates across New Zealand, across a lot of electorates. He probably should have just focused on his own running and try to win a seat. When you're talking about freedoms, does he align with my values? Well, there still is that yawning gap for where do we safely put our conservative Christian vote. And I'm at a loss, and I get so frustrated because I've been involved in a grassroots movement years ago, and have seen all the shifts and changes, and I just get so frustrated with the egos, the power plays, the all sorts of things, and it shows up. And you got to remember, you just got to get this grassroots movement together, and we had a momentum with that, and it was snatched away. People doing wrong things, but Winston's galvanized, and he's come in and he's getting that vote. And when I think probably what you'll see is that, like Bruce says, you got to hold your nose and vote for the best option. He is saying all those right things. Whether he sticks with it, you look at his track record, you look at his voting record. He will be the best option for getting past the 5% for that Christian conservative vote. There is a huge gap in amongst this playing field, and I don't think ACT National Coalition is going to do any favours for the conservative Christian values, the conservative Christian, the issues that matter to us. So, but I see a lot of disarray, and like was said, 68 days out, you've got to be longevity, and Winston Peters plays that long game. And these people who are new players who come in, put their names to parties, just saying, well, I'm going to put my hand up now, is just fracturing, splintering that whole vote. And it's confusing and it's just in disarray. I hate to be a pessimist. I always like to see the positive thing, but I get frustrated by that.
Okay, Charmaine says that she believes in miracles, referring to the minor parties. Darren, do you believe in miracles?
I'm a great believer in miracles, Bob. Absolutely. I mean, I think I just want to encourage our minor parties. I mean, it is about thinking in decades. All of these things are. The thing about Winston, he does, whether you like him or not, he has credibility. He's a guy who's been in the midst of it, and so it's not like backing someone who doesn't really understand the whole political realm, which is great. But yeah, look, I just think that the minor parties, it's their opportunity to get their voice out there. They've got to get their message out there. I think that Kiwis are looking for different ways of thinking, and so this is why we have a democracy and MMP, and so yeah, I just think it's great. Let's get out there, get organised, but yeah, it's the long game. Got to think in decades. Got to be strategic. This whole thing of it's splitting up and not learning to work together when agendas are very similar just does not make any sense to me. But there you go.
Okay, Bruce, you get the final say. Place for the minor parties. How do they get noticed?
Well, my sympathy was with them, and emotionally I would like to see minor parties do well, but when I look at them, I can't see anything that excites me very much at all. And the minor parties have difficulty, I know, creating waves that you don't see much about them in the media, and you've got to hunt up on websites to find out what they're doing, and they just don't register. And if you're not registering, you don't get the vote. And it seems to me that I'm not excited. It may well be because I'm not informed. It may well be because they don't have much to say, but nevertheless, I don't think they're going to make any headway. New Zealand First, I suppose, is a kind of minor party, but it is true. He's the most the New Zealand First, the most conservative party, or let's put it another way. It's the one that's closest to a conservative understanding of social order, and its voting pattern would seem to suggest that. But it is a matter of holding your nose, it seems to me, and voting for the one that you least don't like.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand just how difficult it is to get to that 5% threshold. It's a huge amount. It's I think it's around 150,000 votes that you need to get to the 5%, and you need to have that coverage. Now, unfortunately, most of the media hang around Parliament building, and so if you're in the House, you get noticed, and if you're outside doing the lawns, nobody notices what you're doing, and that's part of the battle as well. Just this one from Leanne says, hey, Bob, when is that paperwork coming out where it clearly states each party's policies you mentioned a while back? Well, that's Value Your Vote, and Alla and I were working on that this morning, doing some auditing, making sure it's accurate, and it is very informative. So Value Your Vote will be out in a week or two. We're just finalising that. Just one thing that was interesting, and a couple of you touched on it, team, was about trust. The News Hub Read research poll asked voters whether they trusted the leaders. Now, this is who's our next Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon or Chris Hipkins. And it showed that Christopher Luxon, only about a third trust him, but 47% don't trust him. For Chris Hipkins, just over half trust him, 35% don't, although the don't has gone up 8 points. So, there was a bit of a fall for Chris Hipkins. But my question is, and Darren, I'll start with you. Why don't people trust Luxon? Is it because he just hasn't been in the news? Because it seems like Hipkins has been fighting all the fires, and he would be the one being punished more than Luxon would be.
Yeah, look, I mean, just going back to those 4 points that I raised around trust, competence, integrity, consistency, and an ethic of care. I mean, if you just thought about it from that basis, then if you look at Chris Hipkins, then he has been the guy who's been given stuff. When things are going badly, he's given stuff. And, and that's a signal that, and whether or not he's achieved, within that, that's a potentially different story. But there is that perception he is the kind of the minister of everything, or he was, before being the prime minister. So there is that sense of competency. He is consistent. He tends to have brought a consistent story, a consistent persona over time. I would think, just from my own personal, viewings. But the one that really strikes me is this idea of the ethic of care. And the thing about Hipkins is that he turned up in Auckland. He was there during the floods. Gabriella. It's like he's had an opportunity to show that he's willing, and I think that there is a sense of a persona that cares beyond himself. He cares about others. Now, again, it's a persona. It may, or I have no reason to doubt that. But whereas with Luxon, it's he hasn't had that opportunity to kind of show how he responds, how he does he care about New Zealanders, average Kiwis who are struggling. He probably does, but it's just, again, it's a persona. It's how's he perceived. Obviously, he has a great track record in relation to Air New Zealand. So the competencies there, people who have worked for him love him. But it's just, if you look across those factors, you think, well, just landing on that ethic of care and the persona and how they're perceived in relation to that. I just wonder whether that's tipping things.
Okay. Ate, have you got praise for either of them? I'm suspecting no.
No, I think the reason why Chris Hipkins is seem to be people trust him. People are just deceived because he's always on the media, and of course with advertisement, whoever you see all the time, the negative, and then his response is completely funded by the New Zealand media. So people probably feel sorry for him. I do not trust any of them, but I think it's just a media thing, and just like with Jacinda, just every time she's there on the media talking about kindness and just pull the wool over people's eyes. So people are just deception because of the media coverage.
Yeah. I mean, Ala, I do sort of feel a bit sorry for Chris Hipkins, to be honest, because it's kind of like he got passed a hospital pass, as we say in rugby or football terms, in that he seemed to inherit a cabinet that all fell apart as soon as he took over, and I'm not sure it was his fault.
I don't know about feeling sorry, but he definitely has capitalized on the opportunity, I guess, to right certain wrongs, or I think it's done more favorable things for his image than it has like unfavorable things. I think what Darren said in terms of the public having more exposure to Chris Hipkins, he's obviously been in the game a bit longer. He's like the safe option, like when you don't know what the other options are. So our default is to go with safety and trust, and he's got somewhat of a record. I don't like either of them, or I think I'm indifferent, but I definitely know with Hipkins, like in terms of education, like he's a big part to blame in the state of our education sector today. Lots of the things that could have been done under his ministerial portfolio when he was at the helm, he did not do. He also is probably part of the reason why we're up in arms about relationships and sexuality education. That was under his reign. So I think the public have seemed to gloss over that. But it also helps when you've got a gazillion spin doctors called the New Zealand media. They're always going to portray you favourably to the public. And so I would hope people are pushing beyond the smoke screens and the catchy headlines and actually really look at what he's achieved. In terms of education, he hasn't done a lot. Like, he's actually made it worse. And he's stitched up our future governments in terms of mitigating some of the shortfalls in our education sector that we're going to reap as a country actually soon. So
Okay.
I don't really like either of them, and none of them. They're not really exciting, as Bruce has previously mentioned. I'm holding my nose too, so I might close my eyes while I'm at it as well. So
Okay. Sue, can you figure out why Luxon doesn't score as well as Hipkins when they both seem pretty similar?
Yeah, Labor have been very, very cunning. They definitely had a plan once Jacinda stepped down from her reign. They've run a campaign of Chippy from the Hut. Here's your old Labor guy. He's trustworthy and he's just like you. He's Chippy, and he's a safe pair of hands. And if you fall for that, and even his gaffes, he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up," and he's just, they've run this campaign which makes him very personable and trying to sort of that old Labor kind of. We know you. We're here for you. We're the party for you. Good for you, party. Whereas with Christopher Luxon, they've painted him as he comes from a CEO. So I guess the perception that around the media or the spin masters from oppositions want to paint him as the CEO, so distant from, a little step away from the employee, a little bit disconnected, a little bit aloof. And I think that's where that campaign is. A lot of things irritate me. Yes, this sort of Chippy from the Hut irritates me as well. But as equally, Christopher Luxon, he has got that aloofness or a little bit, a disconnect there. But Christine said that she's met him and he's very personable. I've met Nicola Willis and I find her very personable and very genuine and very quick with her answers too. Very, straight into from economics to she answered what is a woman. So it is a different campaign, and people see Chippy from the Hut, or they see a more disconnected, a step away CEO persona.
Yeah, interesting that you raised Nicola Willis, because we were giving her a bit of praise because she was saying that sex education was about parents and about being done at home. But I noticed that she walked that back and said, "Oh, no, it was taken out of context, and that actually it was, no, schools should still be involved." And basically. I'm not sure.
A lot of things back.
Well, it's certainly a Liberal focus, and that's permeating through a lot of the National Party, unfortunately. Bruce, you got the final say on this one. I mean, why the difference in the trust levels? They seem both similar type of characters.
Well, at a very simple level, I think Chris Hipkins is seen as a fall guy, and there's some sympathy for that position. He's more telegenic. He smiles more than Luxon. And he looks better. And I think it was Samuel Johnson said that if you're going to be hanged in the morning, it sharpens the mind remarkably. And Chris Hipkins' mind's been sharpened remarkably because he may well be hanged in the morning.
Yeah.
So that makes things clearer and sharper, I think. And that gives him a kind of impetus that Luxon doesn't seem to have. One other interesting thing about them is that Luxon's background seems to be held against him by a large part of the electorate. Whereas Hipkins, which is much more doubtful and dubious and concerning, is not. And there are obvious reasons for that, I dare say, because of the way the media presents them and the way New Zealanders think about the world. So Luxon is beating up against a hard wall, but he needs to smile more. He needs to be more definitive and be more visionary, or declare himself to be more visionary, so that we can get excited about him. He's very difficult to get excited about.
Yeah. Okay. Trina Whitaker says the media are pro Hipkins. The boy from the hut humanises him. I think that's one of the points that you made, Sue, wasn't it? Sue Edwards is telling you guys off. Mr. Rogers, can't believe no one knew this. He's worth looking up, a great man. Well, he knows his biology, Sue, so that's always a good thing. And Craig says, I must say Bob's hair is looking sharp tonight. Thank you, Craig. That's that shaver that I bought during COVID lockdown, 20 on top, 9 and 6 on the sides. Saves me money every time. As an accountant, I absolutely love it. Now, there's actually some interesting data from the Roy Morgan poll, and just if you dug deep into it. And what it showed is this, that men favour National Act New Zealand while women are evenly split between the left and the right. So on an overall basis, men are heavily in favour of a potential National Act coalition, 56.5%. See circled there, bottom right. Almost double what men want, Labour Greens 28.5%. But in contrast, support amongst women is evenly split between Labour Greens up the top there, 40.5%, and National Act Coalition also on 40.5%. Even for younger men aged 18 to 49, a majority support a potential National Act New Zealand coalition. Women aged 50 plus, that's none of you ladies, of course, favour a potential National Act New Zealand coalition. However, younger women like Ala, aged 18 to 49, are the only major demographic group which favours the governing Labour Greens on 37%, just ahead of National Act. Nearly a third of younger women support other parties, not including any of the big four. So, Ala, I think I need to come to you firstly, and as you'll see, the topic of this particular section is Kiwi men more right. That's a play on word. I left out the word leaning. Kiwi men are more right, which I thought you'd appreciate.
Depends on what you mean by right.
Yeah. So why do you think that women are more likely to favour Labour Greens as opposed to men?
Oh, obviously I'm not a man, so I had to ask a man about this. So I asked my husband, who's a bit younger than me, and he said men prefer facts over feelings. I don't know if that resonates. I think often in terms of leftist-leaning ideologies, there's a lot of tugging towards social issues that perhaps tug more at women than men. If we look at, I think also it is probably a byproduct of feminism over the decades or centuries in terms of this idea of being liberalised from traditional family values, or what I would call biblical womanhood. And so this idea of being free and independent and not needing a man, not wanting to be a mother, raise children, the left, that's what the left proposes as pathways to happiness. And so they seem to douse this up in certain policies that work towards that. So I think that's the appeal at a younger age, because obviously you're working at a career or things like that. You want things that support that. So I think men often, they want to hear about issues in terms of economics and businesses, consumerism. Women do too. I'm not saying women don't. I'm saying men probably have a preference for things that will help them provide, fulfill their God-given roles as husbands, as providers, as males. So, and I think there's look, I'm going to take it back to Genesis and just say that Eve was deceived first and then Adam. So I'll just leave it at that. People can make up their conclusions from there. And I don't want your correction, so that's okay. Keep it to yourself.
Okay. Bruce, you're warm, fuzzy and, nice and liberal. I mean, you're not left-leaning. So what's going on here?
Well, can I give you a little picture, a little story?
Yep.
I've got some grandchildren, would you believe? And I've got one doing third year in economics at university. And she was very surprised at the third year. I think she said there were 40 people in the class and she's the only girl, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Apparently girls don't want to do economics. And I think probably there's a reason for that. I mean, women are, I'm not sure that I can improve on what's already been said, actually, but women are instinctively more cooperative than men, and I think cooperation is seen as a liberal value. And I think they're more swayed by apparent or real suffering and social justice issues. And feminist arguments have shaped the way they think, certainly younger women. Interesting situation in Australia, the Teal Party, if you know the Teal Party, the new party, I suppose we'll call it a left-wing party, but it's almost run entirely by women. and initiated by women. And it's largely around climate change issues, and that's their focus, environment and so on, because that's seen as sort of bringing people together, and women seem to be on that side of the world, that side of the political spectrum. But the interesting thing is that it seems in New Zealand anyway, much protest that's been going on in politics has also been coordinated by women in New Zealand, which I think is very interesting. And equity issues look like kindness. And
Okay.
I think that's probably enough.
Okay, so I thought that, obviously the women's vote may have gone to Labor, especially with Jacinda at the helm, but she is no longer. Does that mean that women are rethinking their vote, or is it they still like that?
There was never
left-wing
any
policy?
doubt that I was going to be voting for Jacinda. You set me a task to understand the left, why women would vote left, and I also asked my right-leaning husband, why do men think like this? I think the women on the left seek security. They seek security from the state and the care factor.
Yeah.
That they look to the state to create those policy platforms. They love the caring, the dental care one. There's just in the last 24 hours, health, the food in schools, all those sort of things. And women, these are broad generalisations. Women, natural nurturers, so therefore they tend to go towards left-wing politics when it comes to being soft on crime, being against the death penalty even, whereas men are more pragmatic and they don't see the tier of an offender. They see the results of discipline, that because they think of the long term, well, a bit of discipline won't hurt you because in the long term you'll be able to be better at life. So they see the vision more and more effective in their long term application of discipline. So men have attitudes to that they want to provide for that income in the households, and so they have to be independent in that. So being independent means being independent from state and state provision. If you take state, the dollars, you've got to play by their rules. But I was going to also bring up the Teals. Bruce just mentioned the Teals were an arm of the Liberal Party that actually were more leftist, that swung some very safe Liberal seats, which is our equivalent of National here in New Zealand in the last election in 2022. They come from comfy suburbs, idealistic, principled women in theory, but they will still drive their SUVs with their little darlings to their kids to the latest climate change protest. Very altruistic and very idealistic. And I think they're the differences that I came up with. The young men too, the Jordan Peterson effect. So they're deemed to not be able to sit still and listen, but they can go to an auditorium and sit still for 3 hours and listen to Jordan Peterson. It's about the message.
Okay, and I've actually just given a book to Ala to read, which I bought for her advanced Christmas present, Toxic Masculinity. Who's it by, Ala?
Nancy R. Piercy.
Okay, comes highly recommended. So that's what the Family First staff are reading. So we'll report back on that. Darren, do you think men are more conservative and women more liberal?
Look, when it comes to government, I'm definitely a less is more guy. I'll just leave it there.
Are you too scared to say anything in case your wife tells you off?
I feel like it's been covered so well tonight, Bob. I really do. Yeah.
Ate, have you got anything to add?
I agree with what has been said. I think as far as what's been happening over the last few years, where we've had women leaders who are not role models. They think they're role models, but Jacinda and some of the lesbians and stuff in Parliament are modelling to the young girls who are, just looking for identity. where, I mean, I'm not wanting to generalize, but I think it's important that we look at some of the issues like fatherlessness, where girls are looking for role models when dads are not home. So they're really, looking to the left. And I just think that's what's happening here. And of course, the young girls have been targeted, as we see the LGBT gender dysphoria, where we see a massive increase over the last 5-10 years, and people just changing about the LGBT and the whole identity issues. And I think we should not forget the role of fathers in the home.
Okay. I think I covered everybody on that one, didn't I? Right, final topic, team, because we're just about out of time. I'm actually going to skip one, so we'll come back to the American research that we did. And I want to talk about what Ala mentioned in her free speech moment. Paid parental leave. The National Party is accusing Labor of picking politics over parents because Labor voted against a members' bill that would have allowed choice when taking paid parental leave. And now the interesting thing about this whole debate is that it was actually the National Party are crying foul now, but actually back in 2016, they blocked paid parental leave being extended to 26 weeks and actually exercised a financial veto. So it kind of seems that neither party is perfect on this issue, but it raises the bigger question that I want to put to the panel, and that is, do you support paid parental leave? What should it be at role? Who should it go to, and how much and for how long? Look, Ala, as the expectant about to go on paid parental leave, what do you think?
Obviously, in light of my circumstances, I'm for it. But I always have. I think, I think parents should be home, both, that paid for both parents, spouses, or caregivers, as they call them. In terms of a duration, in an ideal world, I think a year to 18 months, because I know in some sort of Nordic countries, that's the duration that both parents can have up to, but also they've got a different economy and tax system, which allows for that kind of arrangement. So I think 6 months is great, but in terms of what the research is showing around bonding for both mother and child, mother, not a birthing parent, which is what one Labor MP referred to a adult human female in her counter speech. Her name was Nacy Chen. Anyways, sorry, that was my pregnancy rant that came out of nowhere. So I think, 6 months ideal, but I think a year to 18 months would be great. I think we need more parents at home. Perhaps we should take away from investing in daycares and putting it into supporting parents being at home, as opposed to paying other people to look after our children when parents actually want to be home with their children.
And just before I come to you, Sue, father leave, according to the latest OECD report, on average, OECD countries offer 9 weeks of paid father-specific leave. 9 OECD countries provide no paid father-specific leave. 10 offer 2 weeks or less, like New Zealand. However, at the other end of the scale, 9 countries reserve 3 months or more of paid leave for fathers. If you live in Japan or Korea, it can be up to 12 months. That's for fathers. Sue, should we be funding this, or should the states stay out of families?
Well, states should always stay out of families, as far as I'm concerned, because families are little microcosms of independence, and they're healthy and functioning when they can do it together, and when they have the wider whānau around them, when they have community around them. It's a better option. You can target the need. You can look after one another in a much better way than just a case manager and a family, or a tax agent and the family. I'm actually against, in principle, the paid parental leave. It might surprise you. Personally, I missed out on paid parental leave. It just came in just after my kids went to school. So it's not any, I'm not bitter about that. I think that we should make our own financial arrangements. So it was interesting because I had a heated discussion with my daughter this week because I had that stance. So that was very, very interesting to hear what she had to say. But in principle, no, because I feel that, and it locks an employee into a deal with the employer, and they just, it sets us a time frame on how long you can be a mum at home. And I know there are clauses where you can actually leave your job. You don't have any obligation to stay on your job if you have taken that paid parental leave. But I just, the unsettling at work and in a work environment also as an issue. But I just think that I feel sorry for mums that feel like I'm coming to the end of my so many weeks, and I really want to be mum at home, and we don't get behind women enough and give them that message that it's okay. Let's try and work out a way for you to be at home, and there are ways, and I guess probably some preparation leading up to that time might be wise. We were in an ideal situation, in fact, that we're in a rural area, so our mortgages aren't the crippling mortgages that some people have. It's always been hard, but we were budgeted down to the last $5 being at home. But I just think that the mentality of, if you give women paid parental leave, you're going to keep them in the workforce longer. But I just think that that also has an effect on how many children you have. So we're looking at our birth rates. So I'm looking at a bigger picture as well. Ideally, coming back to, do I agree with, what time frames? I think up to 40 weeks. Having said that, and for mothers and fathers, parents to have the power to make the decisions on how they're going to work. So while I'm against it in principle, I can see that it would benefit families.
Okay, Darren, what do you think? Paid parental leave, yay or nay?
Yeah. Look, we've got our 5th grandchild has arrived just in the last couple of weeks. My oldest son and his lovely wife had a wee girl. So they're both very hard-working people, and it's great to see that they've got some time to get these routines in play and get the wee girl established, mum get back up on her feet, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that's so really, really important. I mean, I guess, when I look back when our kids were young, we never even thought of that. I mean, the whole, and it was we got by on the smell of an oily rag, but Sharon, we had that commitment. She raised, she brought up the kids at home. I mean, it was a great joy and we loved it. But hopefully the kids, and it was great. But things have changed, and these days, I mean, can you live in Auckland without 2 people working? I don't know, possibly, but so that's the way things are, and so we need to fund that, and we need to support our mums and help our kids get as great a start. I love the idea about maybe. There could be a way of a trade-off with ECE. I mean, what a great idea. I mean, mums being incentivized to actually bring up their, have their wee ones at home for a bit longer. They're the kind of thing.
Yeah, Bruce, I think the problem is, and just Vida says here, mothers who stay at home, i.e. are not in the workforce throughout their childbearing, get no payment. That is true. And Philippa says, support mums that choose to be at home, split tax between stay-at-home mums and dads who work. So in other words, the funding follows the child rather than follows just the worker. It's based on family. Bruce, would you see a place for that?
Splitting the tax has been an advocacy for some time. And it's a good idea, I think, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's a very good idea. I tend to agree with Sue. I'm 2 minds of it. In the best of all possible worlds, unless we don't live in the best of all possible worlds, it might be okay. But it looks like a good thing. But because we're not having children, anything that helps to encourage having children is probably positive. And if it does that, then it probably is on the positive side. On the surface, it does look like an exercise in practical compassion. However, I'm suspicious of it because it is an increase in government control over family life, as we've heard, by making working mothers and consequently families more dependent on the state. Now, perhaps even more significant than that, it encourages a mindset that the working woman is superior to that and greater benefit to society than the woman who stays at home to look after children. It encourages that kind of thinking. Now, I suspect that short-term benefit will be outweighed in the long term by reordering the family life, that can hardly be a good thing. And I suspect in the case of the Japanese or the Koreans that we're hearing, for example, with having a long period of parental leave that fathers can have, of course, they're in demographic freefall. And so anything that increases the kind of family life and encourages the having of children, which I suspect is the motivation for that, rather than what might be the motivation in a country like New Zealand, although where our birth rate is declining too, but not to the extent that countries like Japan and Korea have at the moment.
No. Ate, final say. What do you think?
I fully support paid parental leave, definitely for at least 6 months. And I think it's so important because, I mean, medically, if people go back to work within, I know some people who go back to work even after 2 weeks. Your brains and your hormones as a mother, you're not even able to. I forget things. When I had my kids, and your joints are not even, it's still lax. And, to force people to go back to work for financial reason, it's awful. So I think it's so important that women and men are encouraged to stay at home. And we know the research, the bonding that happens, what happens to the kids' IQ when mom or dad is at home, compared to putting them in childcare. And, just growing up in Tonga, I practiced as a doctor for over 30 years, but, 20 years ago, you hardly hear of postnatal depression. Whereas, you have families, as Sue was talking about, but the reality is that many people don't have grandparents around to look after them. Aunties are working. So I think it's so important that we support, these mothers and dads. And I remember when I had my kids, of course, we didn't have, postnatal problem, but I had support. I remember being at home for the first 6 months. It was a deliberate choice that my husband and I did, but we could afford it. Whereas there's so many people, they don't have the luxury and they don't have families. So we definitely need to support our parents to be able to stay at home, to help the kids. Kids who grow up with their parents do far much better than kids who are in childcare. But I understand that there are some parents who can't have that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, great. Look, we are well over time. I'm glad Ronji isn't on the panel because he'd be coming around to give me a hiding after this for going so late. Just very quickly, Fiona says, this talk is great. Are they on regularly? Fiona, we're here every Monday night at 8 o'clock, so we expect to see you. And just one final very important message from Craig, who says, I must say Bob's hair is looking sharp tonight. Well, that's it for tonight. Bruce, Darren, Sue, Ala, Ate, thank you very much. Team, thank you for watching, and have a great week. We will be back here next Monday night at 8 o'clock. Have a great week.
Yeah.